Hello, we are in chapter 31 with the Course Companions reading group, Emily Bennington and Robert Perry, reading out of A Course in Miracles, complete and annotated edition, starting week 2 of the study guide. And this is chapter 31, the final vision, section 4, the real alternative. If you would like to close your eyes and join me in prayer, if you are able to. Dear Father, please enable me an open mind and a new experience with today's reading and all things. Help me to be who you would have me be, do where you would have me go, go where you would have me go, and say what you would have me say. And to whom, dear God, please allow me an open mind to change. Help me to realize that there is no sacrifice that can be asked and none that can be made. I love you, God. Amen. The real alternative. There is a tendency to think the world can offer consolation and escape from problems that its purpose is to keep. Why should this be? Because it is a place where choice among illusions seems to be the only choice, and you are in control of outcomes of your choosing. Thus, you think within the narrow band from birth to death, a little time is given you to use for you alone, a time when everyone conflicts with you. But you can choose which road will lead you out of conflict and away from difficulties which concern you not. But they are your concern. How then can you escape from them by leaving them behind? What must go with you, you will take with you, whatever road you choose to walk along. Real choice is no illusion. Excuse the symphony of snores here. But the world has none to offer. All its roads but lead to disappointment, nothingness, and death. There is no choice in its alternatives. Seek not escape from problems here. The world was made that problems could not be escaped. Be not deceived by all the different names its roads are given. They have but one end, and each is but the means to gain that end. For it is here that all its roads will lead, however differently they seem to start, however differently they seem to go. Their end is certain, for there is no choice among them. All of them will lead to death. On some you travel gaily for a while before the bleakness enters, and on some the thorns are felt at once. The choice is not what will the ending be, but when it comes. There is no choice where every end is sure. Perhaps you would prefer to try them all before you really learn that they are but one. The roads this world can offer seem to be quite large in number, but the time must come when everyone begins to see how like they are to one another. Men have died on seeing this because they saw no way except the pathways offered by the world, and learning they led nowhere, lost their hope. Let's read footnote 31. Men have died here seems to refer to suicide, given the many references in the Course to suicide, and given the fact that suicide is a result of loss of hope. Lost their hope. However, it probably also refers to dying rather than actively taking your life as a result of profound hopelessness. The sentence appears to be a reference to a line from Shakespeare's As You Like It. Men have died from time to time, and worms have eaten them, but not for love. The point of the Shakespeare line is that no one dies from a fatal cause of heartbreak. The sentence from the Course, however, suggests that one can die from a fatal case of hopelessness. And back to the text. And yet, this was the time they could have learned their greatest lesson. All must reach this point and go beyond it. And if you're here with me, I'm sure you've experienced some of that. It is true indeed, there is no choice at all within the world. But this is not the lesson in itself. The lesson has a purpose, and in this you come to understand what it is for. Why would you seek to try another road, another person, or another place when you have learned the way the lesson starts, but do not yet perceive what it is for? And we're going to go down and read footnote 12. The way the lesson starts is that all the roads of the world but lead to disappointment. Where did I get that from? Nothingness and death. You have learned this. Yet, in spite of this, you still try to muster hope that you will find an exception, something in the world that will deliver happiness. Back to the text. For purpose is the answer to the search that all must undertake who still believe there is another answer to be found. Learn now without despair. There is no hope of answer in the world. And I think if you're here, you've probably experienced that as well. But do not, and reading the text again, but do not judge the lesson, which is but begun with this. Seek not another signpost in the world which seems to point to still another road. No longer look for hope where there is none. Make fast your learning now and understand you but waste time unless you go beyond what you have learned to what is yet to learn. For from this lowest point will learning lead to the heights of happiness in which you see the purpose of this lesson shining clear and perfectly within your learning grasp. Who would be willing to be turned away from all the roadways of the world unless he understood their real futility? Is it not needful that he should begin with this to seek another way instead? For while he sees a choice where there is none, what power of decision can he use? The great release of power must begin with learning where it really has a use. And what decision has power if it be applied in situations without choice? The learning that the world can offer but one choice, no matter what its form may be, is the beginning of acceptance that there is a real alternative instead. Footnote 13. This sentence finally reveals the purpose of the lesson. The lesson only begins with the idea that the world can offer but one choice, described earlier as disappointment, nothingness, and death, which means that there is no hope of answer in the world. The actual purpose of the lesson is to learn that there is a real alternative instead. And back to the text. To fight against this step is to defeat your purpose here. You did not come to learn to find a road the world does not contain. The search for different pathways in the world is but the search for different forms of truth. And this would keep the truth from being reached. Think not that happiness is ever reached by following a road away from it. This makes no sense and cannot be the way. To you who seem to find this course to be too difficult to learn, let me repeat that to achieve a goal you must proceed in its direction, not away from it. And every road that goes the other way will not advance the purpose to be found. If this be difficult to understand, then is this course impossible to learn. But only then, for otherwise it is a simple teaching in the obvious. There is a choice which you have power to make when you have seen the real alternatives. Until that point is reached, you have no choice, and you can but decide how you would choose the better to deceive yourself again. This course attempts to teach no more then that the power of decision cannot lie in choosing different forms of what is still the same illusion and the same mistake. All choices in the world depend on this. You choose between your brother and yourself, and you will gain as much as he will lose, and what you lose is what is given him. How utterly opposed to truth is this, when the lesson's purpose is to teach that what your brother loses, you have lost, and what he gains is what is given you. Now we'll read footnote 14. This tells us the content of the real alternative. The content of all the world's roads is that you choose between your brother and yourself, and you will gain as much as he will lose, and what you lose is what is given him. The content of the real alternative is that what your brother loses, you have lost, and what he gains is what is given you. He has not left his thoughts, and we're going to go back down to footnote 15. He refers to God. So God has not left his thoughts. But you forgot his presence and remember not his love. No pathway in the world can lead to him, or any worldly goal be one with his. What road in all the world will lead within, when every road was made to separate the journey and the purpose it must have, unless it be but futile wandering? All roads that lead away from what you are will lead you to confusion and despair. Yet has his never left his thoughts to die without their source forever in themselves. He has not left his thoughts. He could no more depart from them than they could keep him out. In unity with him do they abide, and in their oneness both are kept complete. There is no road that leads away from him. Footnote 16. The world's roads were built to lead away from God, but because we cannot actually leave him, they only produce an illusion of traveling away from him. Back to the text. A journey from yourself does not exist. How foolish and insane it is to think that there could be a road with such an aim. Where could it go, and how could you be made to travel on it, walking there without your own reality at one with you? Forgive yourself your madness, and forget all senseless journeys and all goalless aims. They have no meaning. You cannot escape from what you are, for God is merciful and did not let his Son abandon him. For what he is, be thankful, for in that is your escape from the madness and from death. Nowhere but where he is can you be found. There is no path that does not lead to him. And now let's read the commentary by Robert Perry. The Real Alternative. This is such a masterful section. It has long been a favorite of mine. We see life as full of conflict, yet at the same time as offering us a multitude of roads to take. Almost like a chase scene in the movies, where the protagonist is surrounded by adversaries, yet at the same time has a multitude of creative options, like grab that motorcycle and take it up those stairs. It's really a game of figuring out the right road and using our best driving skills as we travel along it. That's not life in a nutshell, isn't it? No, it's not. In Jesus' view, we are simply fooling ourselves. Here is my attempt at capturing his view in a commentary I wrote on this section years ago. Imagine that you stand at a crossroads with 10 roads radiating out from it. One of those signposts is there that has a sign for each road pointing in the road's direction. You look down each one of the roads. The first one you look down looks dark, twisted, rocky, and thorny. Forget that, you think. You keep looking down the various roads until you find the one that looks perfect. It is smooth and gently winding. It passes through a beautiful landscape with trees, birds, and flowers. You even like the name of it, Happy Trails. So you choose that one. You set off down it, whistling a happy tune. Unfortunately, however, you failed to notice something crucial on the signpost. In small letters underneath the name Happy Trails, it said, Death, 41 miles. Indeed, if you had looked closer at the signs, you would have seen a similar statistic under the name of every single road. The only thing that differed was the distance until death was reached. We have been pouring our power of choice into choosing among options that are not truly different. They look different, but they deliver the same outcome, almost against our will. This has been slowly sinking into us. On an emotional level, we have been realizing that no matter what we do, we always end up in the same basic spot. One result of this is despair and an attendant loss of emotional vitality. A related result is resignation. We come to feel that our choices have no genuine power because none of them make any substantive difference. Do you know what happens to rats in an experiment when they get shocked no matter what they do? They give up and don't do anything. At the same time, we don't really want to face this lesson we have learned. It's too depressing. And so we look the other way and get our hopes up for each new road we try. Let's be honest, though, we are just deceiving ourselves. We are trying to protect ourselves from the crushing despair that we fear would result from admitting to ourselves that all the roads are the same. The message of this section is that we can happily embrace this lesson because it is only the first half of the larger lesson that we are in the process of learning. This first half is perfectly designed to move us to the second half, and the second half is the good part. It's what the lesson is really for. The first half is that yes, all the alternatives of the world do lead to the same empty outcome. But that's a great thing because that naturally pushes us to the second half, which is that there is a real alternative instead. As Jesus puts it, who would be willing to be turned away from all the roadways of the world unless he understood their real futility? Without the first half, we would never get to the second half. We know full well that we wouldn't. What is the real alternative? For students of this book, it's the course. It's the pathway that Jesus is laying out for us. We are not really going to give ourselves to this path until we accept the real futility of the pathways of the world. We tell ourselves that we will, but we're just deceiving ourselves again. We can give energy to the course only to the extent that we have first withdrawn energy from the world's ways. The essence of the real alternative, though, is the same for everyone, course students and non-course students alike. That essence is this: your gain is my gain, your loss is my loss. When we learn that, we have stepped aside from all the pathways of the world, all of which jumbled those two statements so that they became, your gain is my loss, your loss is my gain. That was the hateful core of the world's roads. That is why they all ended in misery. Shouldn't we be glad, then, to put them all behind us? That is the choice we stand before now. Will we stop wasting time trying to find new pathways in the world? Will we stop looking for hope where there is none? Will we admit to ourselves that we have already learned the sameness of the world's alternatives? And will we then give ourselves to the real alternative instead? Thank you so much for joining with me on day 358 with the Course Companions group, The Real Alternative. Commentary by Robert Perry. I love you. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for joining with me.